everyone. We have meeting come to order. I'd like to welcome you all to our May District Advisory Committee meeting, and welcome to the audience, whether here or elsewhere. The first item on our agenda: approve the DAC meeting summary from April 12th. And are there any input? Is there any input on that? I have the most minor of minor things on public comment. It listed Kathy Schreiber as being from Oak Grove. And from the purpose of our meeting, I actually would rather have it be said that she's from sub area 1. Because those lines are really hazy, but that's a minor thing. If we don't get to do that, I don't care. Anybody else have any comments? Please stand as either edited or not. I don't care. So for our next item, give it away. So we're going to, at this moment, suspend Robert's rules, party time. No, and we're going to have Aaron. Must be around here somewhere. I see her.
Yep.
Very good. So Aaron's going to take us through the goal setting discussion.
And thank you for whoever brought me pens.
Pens running over.
Yes. Can you track them down for me?
Scoot over people. Sorry, nobody else. She doesn't. I'm sorry.
Not a laptop.
Chris Cross out his house on the floor here.
Okay. I am happy to be back. I understand, and I want to let the folks online know that I can see the webinar view. I can't see anybody raise their hand, but Jessica, will you?
Do you want me to move you to panel so you can see?
Oh, that would be great, yeah. Then I will be able to see if anybody raises their hand. There we go. And I want to start out, so I see some of you are open to your packet. I want to start out with feedback, any feedback you have about the drafting I did, the goals that we talked about so far.
I do, but I want to let everybody else have a chance to go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it seemed like everything was, I couldn't find anything I disagreed with on there.
Oh, that sounds like good news.
Yeah, although I'm not sure I could figure out if everything was there that we talked about.
Okay.
I went through, looked on the board and looked back and I couldn't figure out anything that was missing.
Okay, you didn't see anything that was missing, but you couldn't fully do a comparison because I did take some really big concepts and I narrowed them down to some core things. Because
The one thing I was kind of concerned about, or maybe, I don't know, is it says, as far as clear system plan, and I guess it seems that the more should be that we have a plan, that we have a system plan, that we have a CIP, that seems like that's the most important thing that we agreed upon.
okay.
And I don't know how that, these are all goals, I guess.
Yeah, so let me tell you, maybe this will help. What I looked at is I looked at everything you talked about, and which was kind of about the parks. And you talked about a few things that were committee goals. And I was trying to consolidate things into what are your committee goals and how can I language what you've told me about your goals for parks that really fall under that what is the committee goals things. And so what I had heard is you for sure want a systems plan, and that systems plan is underway. And I took a lot of the language that had come up around the systems plan and I came up with you want an inspiring and clear systems plan. So and that was the one that seemed to be the most fleshed out. So David, with that, would you propose any changes to that as a goal to have or what is it? It has an inspiring So I also wrote the goals in that positive affirmation. In 5 years, the NCPRD DAC has an inspiring and clear systems plan. So with that, does that help with what I was trying to do?
No, I understand that, inspiring clear is good, but it seems like the emphasis should be on system plan
Okay,
that we have. We have a plan, because we don't have a plan.
okay. How would you rewrite that?
I don't know,
Or actually,
capitalize or.
okay, actually, let me pull back that question for a second. Other feedback, yeah,
Yeah, so I wanna, so after our meeting last week, I was a little. I felt a little disconnected from this process. And I wanna take one quick step back.
great,
So as a committee, we're representing our North Platte Parks Rec District, correct? So we're representing the citizens of the district. I think our goal is to support district work. And I think there needs to be more, I feel like we started to go off into this wonderful world of we're doing our own thing. And there needs to be a connection between the staff, the community, the district, and also the board.
Yeah.
That was lost with me.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm seeing here is there's some really high level things that as a DAC we should be focusing on, and it's the systems plan, because we can't really do anything without the systems plan,
Mhm.
and a few of the other items. A lot of the other goals, I think they really need to be tested by the community during the system plan process.
Okay.
We are not, I don't feel comfortable as a board or advisory board that doesn't have teeth. You get what I mean.
Yeah.
Making decisions for an entire community that, and a department that isn't tested by them. And I also feel that we need to make sure that these things are intertwined, and it's not the DAC going and just doing, we have goals that we just want to go do. That doesn't do anything. So there needs to be, all of this needs to be connected. And I think these are great goals to test with the community. But we still have to focus on the most important parts of what we need to do in the next few years to get this district and to get the staff the resources they need to move forward. That's it. Okay, I'm done. I won't say anything more about it.
I think it's well said.
all right. I'm gonna go right back to you, so you're gonna have to speak again.
Okay,
What, give me some more meat around that. What is move forward? How do we define move forward?
well, I mean, we've been talking about a systems plan. We don't have a CIP.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have, let me rephrase that. We don't have an updated CIP based on the current community's values, goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
We have a governance issue. We struggle with governance. These are big picture items that if we don't address, we're going to sit and talk about things that don't really impact the community. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to those two because those are the two that are always in those are the priorities in my mind. And every time I think about when work wise and district wise, I'm always thinking of what are our priorities to move forward, future, to get more parks. We need to know where there's community gaps. I mean, yeah, you can look at a map and figure that out pretty easily, but we also need to know where are marginalized community members, where is there more investment? We need to see the picture. So,
Yeah, okay,
governance issue. Having the ability to be more nimble as a district, making sure the staff have support and resources to do what they need to do to serve the community. And that's, does that make sense? Those are the
Yeah.
three in my mind, and just,
I think that makes sense to me. I'm gonna put it back to y'all, because it's gotta make sense to you.
I think Grover had his,
Oh, bro, sorry.
This is our signaling. There's more. Yeah,
All right, I don't know, so I'm gonna say Grover, Corey, and then Lisa.
Okay, good. So I actually agree with the vast majority of what I heard. I just want to put some nuance. So our system plan is all the way back to 2007. And what I'd like to point to is that from 2000, I can't say how, but from 2007 till now, a lot of non-input from a broader area. And so 5 years ago in this very room, a group of us came and asked the board of directors to let us redesign and work to have a proportional representation. Is that the definitive answer to what everybody wants? No, but are there some really strong points of view that have been collected from many people? Yes, so I agree. That tell it all. How do we get all that in the system plan? That's still to be seen, and I understand it will be that way, but it's still a mystery for me because I don't know how the system plan is actually going to be done. And will it take advantage of this connection, the two-way, the board of directors approved the two-way model of communication. That's what the whole sub area piece was designed to help expand. That's why we're having a meeting next week and another meeting in 3 weeks after that to continue to grow that. So that's the first piece. So, but I really agree with that. We are not in a position to say what they are, except we already know that a lot of people broadly see the need for more tree canopy of the appropriate kind that will last into the future. But yes, we have, I mean, there's no question, increased tree canopy improves property value, health, saves money, all those things. And I need to make sure that I want to make sure it gets included in there.
Okay, so Grover, does this capture kind of that idea, the role and process of the DAC in the systems plan development?
Sure.
Okay.
And it is that there is a role, because that's another thing that while I have great respect, I will get a chance when we go through reports and stuff to talk again, how much improvement, no, how much increase in communication. First of all, we have more staff now and things are up and running. We have a new director and he's not new anymore. And so, I mean, the point is we've had a chance to work stuff through. And yet, how do we get people's input included? And how, I don't like the word transparent, but it's such, how much do we know is what's being planned as opposed to, here's the plan. That part of, so when you say the role in the process of DAC in that, and when, because right now, just to finish one thing and I'll be done. PGA rolled out the community engagement model almost a year ago, and it specifically focuses on appropriately shifting using the model of the ISP2 public participation model. And you don't do it on everyone because that we'd never get anything done, but we have to look at where it is. And it's in the comprehensive plan that was written in the 70s that we live under. And yet to this day, it doesn't exist at that level. So I'm only sitting here because I'm committed to have more community participation, public participation. And it says right in the state things, in all phases. So that's not like once it's planned and here, what do you think of it? And that's been the model for way too many decades. And the new direction, lots of improvement. I love it. Is it done? Not yet.
And we need to be really clear. So that to me connects up to what I think it was David said about it was Ryan said about what's missing from this is where the connections are. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Corey, Lisa,
Missouri.
Missouri,
It's all right, sorry.
Missouri. Thank you for, no, it's not.
I was waiting to correct you, it's fine.
Got it.
Yeah, that's cool. So, not to rehash, but the connection between the staff and the community I would double underscore that, but what I see, what's missing in my mind is funding, right? So is there enough staff?
two-way arrow.
Maybe not. Does this, do we need, how are we going to develop and buy these parks and buy additional lands? There's not enough money. So it's controversial, bring up the topic of increasing people's taxes, but how can we start the conversation that we don't have funds?
All right.
And what would we do with it if we had it? That's
And
what
what,
those two things
and
tie
what would
together.
you do with them if you had it should be in systems plan, right? But I get that we're all cool on the same page on that. We want the system plan to guide the communications, to guide the process, to guide. Yeah. All right, Lisa, Brian.
So I guess I want to pick up on points that Ryan and Siri made, which is about funding. To me, I think what you've written, your goal 1 is pretty good, except it doesn't reference public involvement. So it should have, I'm picking up what Dorothy was talking about, it should have something about the public, our involvement and public involvement. But I do feel like funding is a separate goal.
Okay.
I think, no matter, I mean, you know, what the funding goes to will be shaped by the systems plan, but I don't think there's any question
Okay.
that we need funding.
Okay.
We need a higher level.
And this is my question back to you, and I'm gonna do this before, because this was a place that I noticed as a facilitator, I felt like I didn't have the knowledge to answer the question. So the question came up for me is, what is the DA, what is this group's role in funding? As opposed to other groups' roles in funding?
Well, I mean, what's our role in anything? I mean, it's advisory, right?
Right.
I mean, we don't make the decision. It's only advisory, we can only advocate for,
Okay,
going for funding.
all right.
It's not.
Let me, I took you a little bit sideways, but just to highlight that question, because I think y'all have to be clear on it, and I wasn't clear on it for what the conversation was. Right,
Yeah, really, I'm just more of a clarification.
Uh-huh.
So I love everything everybody said. I agree with everything everybody said. A lot of the one thing that we haven't got to yet, and this is the support staff is systems plans do identify funding. System plans do identify gaps in service. They identify that the RFP, which I will be part of that process, and those respondents are going to have to respond on how are they going to engage the community and what does that engagement model look like? Then there'll be more than likely, and I'm guessing, Mike, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, there'll be negotiations on, okay, how do these this consultant, how do they do the engagement model that we have placed in the community or the county? And they have to come up with that. So those things come, and I don't think that's actually really been said out loud to the group. That's why I keep harping on the system plan, is because it covers the beginning of the funding piece. It covers, it'll talk about governance, it should talk about those things. And it also should include the engagement, I'm hoping, at every single level to that next level than what we've done before. And looking at, hopefully, some of the work that's been done before and having a better understanding. So when I always just keep saying systems plan, there's a lot of this that rolls into that. I don't want to take any liberties on saying that that's what it's going to do, but that's how I typically see it when I do a systems plan. So
it's a qualitative evaluation. So I mean, we're scoring, but there's also the opportunity for final interviews and interaction to determine, again, some of those desired outcomes that we're wanting.
and what that engagement's going to look like.
Yeah.
And how are they going to fill these gaps? And I'm doing that right now. It's an iterative process.
okay.
Does that help at all?
Well, I'm gonna ask a question to Mike and to say, and this is just transparently, we've been talking about what's the district's goals, what's the committee's goals, what's the governing board's goals, and what is in this system plan. So in terms of committee goals, what makes sense to you about what would be included in the systems plan for the committee to name? Like for you, does it make sense that if the committee had a goal about having a clear systems plan in place, that they would say, and that includes funding and engagement and these kinds of things? Or for you, do you see those as made, the systems plan is happening, and if the committee has funding and engagement goals, those fall outside of the systems plan? Does that make sense of the question?
I think so, and I guess my answer would be from kind of the staffing operational perspective. What we are always looking for, especially from an advisory committee, is support and advocacy.
Okay.
So, the systems plan is it's contracted out specifically to keep it unbiased, where we're using scientific processes and experts in the field. They're going to develop pretty much, everything that's been talked about tonight and more as part of that plan. What we would hope, one of the goals of the DAC and our elected officials is to support that process in whatever way, whether like with the sub areas, being out and promoting that, hey, there's going to be these town hall meetings, or there's going to be these focus groups, or these opportunities for you, to do that, to be out there championing this as well as everything else. I mean, governance, systems plan, additional funding that we'll be going for in the future. This body, at its best is in, working kind of like we've been talking about, in conjunction with everything else, where it's really a very much supporting to our elected officials and supporting and championing the messages that we're trying, because we're producing on our own internally very little. It's all being produced as part of the system plan process.
Okay. Grover.
Yeah, and I just want to make a fine point on, because you made a comment about where does the committee fit into this process? And so our bylaws, what are approved by the board of directors, suggest that our absolutely only place is ours is to advise them. To advise the board of directors.
Right.
And it is to evaluate stuff and be able to advise them. It is to be able to make policy level recommendations to them. So in the time that we've had this reconstituted, I was also on the district advisory board before that, but really it was only about the bylaws. Okay, but it needs, you were there, that's right.
What?
So this needs to, we still do not have the ability to do our job as the bylaws require our job on this district advisory committee. We do not, nobody's fault. I'm just saying the way it is. It's raining outside or it's hot outside, but we do not have the right clothes to do that kind of weather. We don't have the right amount of information, etc., to do what the bylaws say.
Okay.
Bylaws say we advise, we evaluate, we make policy level recommendations, and that means we know about it and are involved in it, and keeping the two-way communication part, which is still growing slowly, but is growing. So that's the part that has not been and needs to be, and so when we talk about it, we talk about the way it's always been, and that is not what we're here to do is, and that's not conflicting with anything, but
All right, so what I saw before I walked in here has been a kind of, it's been solidified or confirmed by this conversation. I've seen, well, I'll confess, I saw 3 things. And I was only able to put 2 of them. I saw a lot of goals for the DAC around systems planning and a lot of goals around, where did I put it? Governance.
Under resources.
Yeah, okay, so, where did it get? So I saw systems plan. And I saw governance. And what I saw was missing. That y'all had talked about, but we hadn't gotten anywhere near a goal on, was the relationships. All of them. Right, you've talked a lot about relationships between the committee and the public, between the staff and the committee, between the staff and the public, right? All of those relationships. And so when I walked in here, what I was testing is, are those kind of our 3 categories? Are the 3 categories systems plan, governance, and relationships? And what y'all have added that I'm not sure where they fit are, and we're all gonna find where they fit together. You've added funding and Grover, I'm looking for, it's not really timing, it's not really process. Actually, I think maybe the timing and the process that you're looking for, Grover, is on the relationships. And the question I'm left with now is, do you have 4 things you have goals about? Do you have one thing that you have a goal about, which is the system plan that has 3 subparts? Or do you have some other shape of this thing? But everything we've talked about up until now and today, I think wraps around those 4 things. I just don't know what shape they take.
Trying to get into it. So in asking for, I'm gonna think out loud here for a second, sorry. In asking for goal setting is to get this group to like have a little bit more laser focus on what they're doing. I see the systems plan. It's a hard project to do. And maybe this group is helping do that with volunteering at engagement, being there at engagement like they did at Milwaukee Made Fun. That maybe that's the role, but like, what is the role for us in system plan? I love the fact that I get to be part of the RFP process. So what does the district need from us to help that process? These are not processes that take 3 people to do.
Right.
They take teams of 30 sometimes. So are we an extension to help? And in that year or 2 that we're doing this helping, we're creating our relationships that we need to be creating. Are we also supporting the governance? Asking the district, what do you need the board of board of directors. The board of directors, what do you need from us to get this moving? And then also thinking, there's a lot of talent here. Maybe there's some alternate funding options, there's some business connections, businesses that we can provide information to the staff who are our stewards, by the way. They are here to be our stewards. We should really appreciate that. How do we help supplement? How do we, and doing all of that is what will build the relationships. And then in 2 years, the DAC will have a clear path on what its focus is, and will have a vested interest in all these pieces. So that's kind of how I'm envisioning it.
What I want to say to you and everyone else is, that to me answers the question I asked, that your immediate goal, and we said 5 years, it can be 2 years, it could be 3 years. We just defined the short-term goal. Your immediate goal is systems plan with some subcategories that are all embedded in systems plan.
Governance wouldn't be embedded in systems.
Oh, governance not embedded in systems plan, okay. So then,
Which is sort of, and for that matter, is relationship.
I think to Ryan's point, I think they're interconnected just in the process.
okay,
And it's not the whole picture, but certainly.
Before I
Building
write-
something, developing something.
sorry, I wasn't following you, Joel.
No, actually, it was just a comment.
Okay. So before I write anything else, other folks, I think the shape, Kate,
I just want to add, I really appreciate what Ryan was saying, and I think it really speaks to something I've been thinking about, which is that engagement in the community piece that I see more and more as the need. Like, we have this, role to be an advisory committee, but it's difficult if the conversations, like I find a lot of conversations I'm having about the town hall is to be kind of vague. And that's difficult because people want to help, but they need to know what they're helping with. They need to know what information is helpful to share. They need to know why they're coming to these meetings. And I think that's an important way we can help NCPRD be successful with the systems plan is figuring out how do we really reach the community in ways that are meaningful to them.
Meaningful engagement. Lisa,
So I guess what I'm hearing here leads to the conclusion that, I mean, both from Ryan and from Michael, well, everybody, that maybe you had it right, the way you wrote it. It was system plan and governance, that's the way you wrote it. If that's it, you know, the systems plan will take finding the consultant, getting the consultant onboarded. It'll be a few months before there's stuff to do. The governance, I don't even know what our role is in that. That's really a question for the county commissioners. So are we not gonna have any meetings for a quarter while everything percolates?
you know what, Ryan Grover was up first.
I listened to what Lisa said and forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, then
I don't think I meant it.
I'm loving this whole like. No, because if we are participating, sorry, I'm volunteering us to participate in engagement. Sorry, Heather. But if we are participating in engagement, we're hearing from the community. That's valuable information. And as we're taking that neutral, it has to be neutral from all of us. We have to listen to the community and hear what they're telling us. It's having a discussion about how is this implemented? What are some of the things that are happening? Is there some funding issues that we can help advocate for because it costs $38,000? How it's using this group and using the talent of this group and the passion and purpose of this group to keep the project moving forward so that in 2 years, we can sit here and have meetings that are super productive and check getting Concord School and Jane's School and, you know, the gym that you guys need to build so I can go to. Things like that together. So there is value in us meeting. There is value. I have our different committees. When I do a project, they meet almost monthly. Try not to take too much time, obviously. And I have them do meaningful work. Like, this is what we heard from the community. How do you feel about this? Is this resounding to you? Like, it's integrating that engagement piece and the knowledge of this group and testing assumptions and making sure that we hit the right amount of things. Like, hey, did you hit the LGBT community? No, oh, you know you didn't? Well, I represent that community. I want to see that happen. You know, that's the kind of testing. And how can I help make that happen?
But won't it be a few months before there's anything to test?
Exactly. So it's a process. You have like layers of, and again, sorry, Heather, I know you don't have all that much here. But there's layers of engagement and depth that you go into and so you have to go through that process. But it's also building those relationships with those community members so that we have 55 people wanting to join this group in 2 years and volunteer and create a friends group that will all be on. I just send you to get funding and to, yeah.
Okay, Grover?
Okay, so the thing I wanted to talk about is why we would be meeting in the meantime is, one, still keep the two-way communication part going, but two, it is to see how the process is unfolding. So we can still, because until there is the governance changeover, this still is about advising the existing board of directors. But I want to show a parallel model and one that was in this organization before. Milwaukee, I've multiple times said, last time I got to say it was on Zoom, but the truth is, they have from the very beginning had a neighborhood advisory board. What they call it, I don't care, but they have their 23,000 neighborhood, and they have a board of a parks board, and that parks board plays an active part. It's missing through the other 4 sub areas. It was in place long ago. I'm not relishing that, but I mean, the point is, it creates the communication both ways, because like the library district advisory committee, we each have the library boards, and they all come together, and that group helps feed the process to keep track of stuff. So it isn't like we're useless or whatever, and assuming we make the governance change that's being discussed, we need to make sure that the 5 sub areas are all still being listened to. And there's a lot of data to say for about 20 years, it hasn't been. That's all I want to make sure we keep focusing on.
Yeah.
No matter what the community is, whether it's geographic or perspective or
Identity.
age or
right,
identity
yeah.
or any of those things.
Okay. Joel.
Just a quick point of housekeeping here, in addition to the city of Milwaukee, the community center advisory representative also has a built-in board, and my board actually is represented by every sub area sitting here too. So, I mean, as far as another model, I mean, I think to kind of jump onto what Robert's saying, I think that's exactly, develop something like that, but it doesn't necessarily be just get lost in the sub area, but
Sorry.
How do you guys feel listened to then? Because sometimes I'll join one of these meetings and feel like, wow, I've wasted a complete hour and a half of my day and wasn't listened to. Not that the board wasn't going to listen to us or that we weren't accomplishing anything interesting. It's this same thing Katie was bringing up, talking to my friend. He has 2 twin boys. He's like, why would I want to do that? What do I get out of this? They haven't fixed the pool of water near my house. Why would they fix this? You know, he lives near you. How in the community center or the library model you were talking about, or the other model that I'm involving, how do you guys establish this relationship or communication that enforces that you're not wasting your time, but you're also being heard and you see action from it? So what exists there? Open question, or maybe meta, or maybe no one wants to talk about it.
I know for me, for our meetings, and actually on Friday, we're having one this Friday. I think it boils down to having that direct line of communication with, say, the community center director, staff there, whether it's through programming or nutrition or whatever. There's that immediate gratification of having communication with the person that's in charge of whatever you're discussing. I mean, granted, a lot of our meetings also become just reports on what's going on, which is fine and good, but you know, every once in a while there is some issues that we want to get resolved. I'm trying to think of the name change was a huge one for our, you know, as silly as that may sound. I mean, that took almost 2 years to kind of get through all the mud and everything, but it feels like you can kind of have a toolbox in front of you with those people, that staff, for example, and you have a unified voice. I mean, I'm sure it's kind of like what goes to, I mean, Grover's been being from forever. I mean, the idea of having some sort of even semi-formalized organization, I think carries a lot of weight, as opposed to, well, I know a lot of neighbors, so I should be on the DAC. I'm gonna go talk to those neighbors, but you know, who knows if your neighbors are a cross section of really what your sub area is or in the district at large. So I think that little slice of formalization helps a lot. That probably doesn't answer the question, but I mean, I know exactly what you mean, thinking about sitting through a meeting for an hour and a half, thinking, well, what the hell did we just accomplish? But yeah, you're not just yelling at the sky when you're in I think, a more formalized setting. So that's at least my take.
I think this is a super important conversation for this group to have, and I think it's a side conversation to the one we're having. So I'm gonna pull us back and thank you for not devaluing your conversation.
Nope.
And so I'm gonna come back to, do you have one goal with some sub goals that we should solidify? Or do you have more than one goal? What's the shape of that?
I thought Lisa had said what you had submitted was basically 2 goals of
Yeah.
system plan and governance change.
Yeah.
And basically had everything covered under those that you had kind of summarized from last time.
I see nods on that. Any challenges to that?
Well, not a challenge, but a point of clarification, because when we were talking about originally, then, under the system plan, that's where funding fits in. But it isn't only there, because it's also under the governance piece, et cetera.
Mhm.
And the relationships, well, is that just under the governance and is relation, because we got all those things, we got the community and that's why there's two-way, so.
Mhm.
It's great in those words, as long as we're clear of what they mean. So, yes, system plan, yes, governance.
So let me be clear. I think,
Well, just, one way to look at this too is, things like the system plan and governance are time limited. They're gonna end, be decided in a
Right.
fairly short amount of time. Relationships and seeking funding are always going to be there. We're always gonna be working on the relationships and we're always gonna be seeking additional sources of funding. So I don't know if that helps to, break things out, but really they are time limited versus kind of open-ended ongoing.
Well, so that I'm good, because we're getting this better definition here. If governance only means the transition in governance, which is what I heard you spoke to, I'm not speaking to, I'm talking about ongoing for what gets put in place and how that governance takes place long after. So for me, I appreciate.
But nobody here, and myself included, is gonna have any control over that. That's gonna be decided by whatever new elected board, if there's a governance change.
I'm glad you said that, because in truth, all the people here, I assume, are residents of the district, taxpayers of the district, and the ultimate authority of the district, how I see things. So I don't disagree with you, but how we get to there and what we set up for that governance model and how all that the input from all those people needs to be, whether it be from one perspective or this or that, or age or poverty, or doesn't matter. They all need to be included in that, but it will be, how will their voices be continued to be met? And that for me is part of governance, not
Yeah.
to transition or not. And I don't disagree with you. I just want to clarify
No,
what
and
we mean when we say governance.
And I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're going to be restricted by Oregon revised statutes on how we can be set up politically as if there is a 266 district. There are restrictions on how it's set up and all of that. I don't pretend to be an expert on that right now. We'll be covering that potentially later. But yeah, I'm not disagreeing with anything you all are saying. I'm also looking at those, next steps as well. So.
Sure. And that's another reason for us to stay in the process, so we can know what those restrictions are and make input to the board, the current board of directors, as to how does it get represented, because the staff representation is one perspective and it's critical to this. But the community perspective, and that's what I would like to think we have a closer connection to, and if we don't, we should keep working at having it closer to. So I agree with Mike, and I appreciate it. And as that comes up, we need to know those things.
Yeah, so let me Grover, that your question in the middle there that was fleshed out was really useful in terms of the time limited and not time limited. And my understanding of my charge was getting you some short-term goals that do not ignore that your relationship and funding needs are ongoing, that your governance needs are ongoing. But what I'm charged to do is to get you a couple of concrete goals, or a few concrete goals, that take the next step towards those long-term goals. And so that's why I started way out in the future to see, okay, where do we want to go? And then we're looking at the next couple of bites at this apple, not eating the whole thing. So that's where my focus is, like, where are those 2 to 5 year goals? Right.
So I'd like to just put this out here. I actually see 4 goals.
Okay.
I think the system plan obviously is very important. It includes funding, but we do have a bigger funding question, and that's going to be intertwined with governance. But if we have those 4 things as general goals, general focus, general priorities. I don't want to say goals, but priorities of this DAC for the next year or 2. Those 4 items, and we're checking every meeting that, hey, are we working on a systems plan? Are we building our relationships with our community, with our district? I almost like the idea of like, this is something we can check, not, I hate saying, I hate checking. Drives me nuts, but like say, these are things that we're checking each.
This is a lens
Yeah,
that you
this is
should,
the lens.
that you should be applying to all of your work.
How are we moving forward on relationships? How are we moving forward on funding? Yes, a lot of it is going to be in the system plan, but how are we thinking about funding as a group outside with businesses and whatever? So I think they're actually 4 small priorities that we should really, as a group, be consistently focusing on. Some things may come up, like a park thing. Great, that's something that we can put in. 4 priorities.
So what's the next step then?
Well, first, we gotta know how Ryan's thought resonates with everyone.
I like it separate. I think you start mashing it all up together and things overlap and
Okay.
you just keep it, we're talking about this specifically and not funding and, or we're talking about relationships and not really system planning right now. I
Okay,
mean,
so for you, those 4 kind of key enough that they're independent conversations, that sometimes will overlap, but the focus is important, okay?
I generally, I like that idea. I think in thinking of them as short-term goals, the systems plan is really the only short-term goal up there though, because I think of the other things, you know, government's relationships and funding are realistically going to be conversations for this committee forever. So there is also that thought of like, doesn't totally make sense to me because I'm looking at 1 short-term goal and 3 long-term goals.
Oh, I'm not gonna let you stay there.
Okay.
You're right, but I'm not gonna let you stay there, David.
I just going back to the funding thing, which seems to be confusing at times, because there's how much we can spend and there's where we get the money from. And it seems like we're, like in the system plan, it's how much we spend. But the governance part is gonna be, future is gonna be how much we can spend, because that's gonna, we're gonna increase spending, it's gonna come through that measure.
Okay. Thoughts, responses, Robert?
Yeah. Excellent point. And I don't know, by the way, I've never done a system plan, so I don't know how much funding fits into that, but I want to speak to it. Having people, and this is where I hear for the 30 some odd years I lived here, there are a lot of people who are pretty disgruntled about what they do and don't get, their tax dollars, where they go, and so forth. And I'm sticking just to parks, we can get into other things now, but so where, unless they believe, like Missouri said, that they went to a meeting and they felt heard, which then builds goals, that then talks about great goals, but to do these 6 things or 12 things or 1,000 things, it takes this much money, so let's prioritize them, and then, okay, where are we gonna find that money? And now we have a relationship that has communication,
Yeah.
people felt heard, they helped shape what's in that list, as opposed to it all happened and here's our list, what do you guys think? Unless it actually people have some sense of belonging or investment in it,
But
or being
Grover,
heard in it.
I need to interrupt because I mean, throughout this whole process, we've described what we're going to do exactly like you said, the first one. At no point have we said that there's going to be anything closed in the system plan process. In fact, we've talked about whole engagement calendars that we're going to be providing. So I just don't know why that keeps getting brought up. We have made the commitment that we are going to be engaging with the community, with our district, and asking you all to take the extra effort to engage on our behalf as well, multiple times. So I just don't, I'm not seeing why we're
so
talking about this secondary part.
That's a good curiosity, because Grover, I know you've heard that, and yet there's still something that's not quite landing for you.
Well, let me just clarify one piece. However the process gets done, not questioning that, will it shift the listening or the perspective of people who, like Missouri, why they bother going to that meeting? What, you know, it just, every year I pay property taxes, it all goes out the door, and what do I get for it? So there's resignation. It
Okay,
is how do people be able to stop having resignations? That's not blaming Mike and the process they do, but it is not clear how that's going to get done. And I keep wanting to say that needs to be included in there so that there is broad sense of being heard.
okay. So let me see if I can, I'll get you just a second, Katie and Ryan. Let me see if I can say it in a different way. Mike has promised to throw a party for people to come give their input. You want to make sure that that party is attractive enough that people will show up and go to
And have an
Dance the dance.
experience that was valuable for them and they felt was worth their time. To
Right.
use Missouri's perspective.
Okay. So I don't, I think you're talking about the same thing from
Yep.
two different directions.
Well, and just understanding that there's gonna be a lot of people telling us or telling the consultants a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Just because somebody says they want something is not necessarily going to make that happen. And that's what I fear is that somebody says, oh, well, I came and said I want a hippodrome built in the middle of town. And if we don't build a hippodrome, then everybody says, well, you broke promises. Well,
Okay.
if we have 1,000 people tell us that same thing, then the systems plan report is going to notice that. It's going to tell us that in the needs assessment. And it's also going to tie the needs assessment to how does that get afforded? If that's a priority, here's funding options and here's the layout. So
All right, let me see whether I can respond to that from Grover's perspective. Grover, you check me on this, okay? Because I think I see the parallel here. Yeah, just because you show up doesn't mean you get your way, but if you show up, showing up to the party, you want to feel heard, and if you don't get your way, you want to feel like I didn't get my way, it didn't happen not because I wasn't heard. It didn't happen for a lot of reasons, and that is conveyed back to me in a way I can hear and respect and understand.
I like the difference between a vote and consensus for me, that people feel that, okay, it's not what I wanted first, but I
So-
get what they're going
Yeah.
with and I'm on.
So
for
you're
that.
saying you don't have to make promises, but you do have to have people feel heard and respected in giving their input. You're opening up a way to get input, and you're talking about input design.
Yes. And the previous experience. This is the very same room that we
Yeah.
had 6 years of the task force for Concord. On that very board, I've got pictures of all, so a lot of the.
different people and this is a different.
Yeah.
it's
Time
different
out,
context.
let me finish that thought. That group of people, and several of them are in this room, felt there was a nope, we're not doing that.
Okay.
So that kind of one more time sitting in a room, why'd I waste my time? So that, I can't speak for everybody, but I know there are many people who sat in this room who have that opinion. So
Okay.
you're right, we're not the same, but you asked what has to be included? Well, we don't do that again. We don't spend all that time and then,
Okay, and I'm gonna ask you, and I'm gonna go to Katie and Brian, but I'm gonna preview that I said, Katie, I said, oh, I'm not gonna leave you with, oh, we have to fund forever. I'm gonna narrow you down to what are we gonna do for funding and relationships for the next 2 years? That's a positive, goal is a positive, proactive, not a, we're not gonna do. So your job, Grover, is gonna be to think about, at least for right now, think about, okay, you want not that, what does not that look like? Right? Okay, Katie,
I just want to say that the vast majority of people in my sub area, they love Pfeiffer Park. It's our lovely North Clackamas Park in the area, and they're pretty happy, which is why we don't see them here angry. And I think that, you know, there are always going to be people who have something negative to say, but there are a lot of people out there who are really happy with the work that is happening now. And that I don't think it's healthy to just listen to those complaints and that they represent everybody. And I don't think it's healthy for this group to focus on that. All right, now we want to hear people, but we also have to represent the group as a whole and our sub area as a whole. And we can't decide just because one person is angry about something that everybody is. Just wanted to say that.
got it.
Aaron, just a 5-minute time check.
Right.
And I want to add on to that, I respect everything you're saying, Grover, but we're at a place where we've got to move forward. We're moving forward with a $550,000 system plan. We're moving forward with a new staff. We're moving forward in projects that have been happening. We still have the governance of the Board of County Commissioners. Sounds like hopefully they're interested in letting us take care of our own stuff and be more nimble and get things done, right? So we have the opportunity to move forward. we have the opportunity to build relationships. If we keep going back here, we are never going to move forward. No more going back. We got it. We get it. I get it. We need to move forward. And that starts by building relationships. That starts by every one of these people on this board or this advisory committee volunteering at the events to help out Heather and her team. Building those relationships. And we've just got to move forward.
Okay.
And that's why I've asked for goal setting and prioritization. Time to move forward. I apologize for the tone, but that's it. We're done. We need to move forward.
Grover, I've got 3 minutes and I gotta tell you what comes next. So I think we've got consensus that we've got to describe these 4 things and what this group wants to do about these 4 things over the next 2 to 5 years. And 2 of them, well, one of them is pretty, it seems pretty clean. It's shifting the governance seems like a pretty clean one that doesn't need a lot of messing with. Thing that I wrote up about systems plan seems like it probably needs a little bit of massaging by somebody who knows your work better than I do. Being one of you. So what I would like to do for your homework for this, so I'm bringing back the homework last time, but with better clarity. I would like one of you to take on each one of these things, to bring a draft for a concrete forward-looking 2 to 5 year goal on each one of these 4 things. And Grover, I want you to choose the one. I want you all to choose them, and I want to respect Grover, what has that the past has brought you here, and the
I want to address that. I do not want to be talking about that. I'm bringing the past forward. For years, I've done a lot of stuff, and if you don't learn from your mistakes and address and build into it, an opportunity to not fall in that hole, walk down the road, fall in the hole, and then walk down a different road. Okay, so it isn't the past, it is what you learned. And from what didn't work, you get to plan something that does work.
Right.
So I actually want to be very clear, there is no going back into the past from where I am only future based.
Right.
But it is with the, you've learned so you can see what needs to be done differently, not to repeat the past. So I don't know how this comment meant that we can't, and we gotta go, I'm only forward focused, only.
so I want to ask you, if you've got the passion, and you've had this passion since the first time I met you, what, 5, 6 years ago, right? You've got the passion for community engagement and involvement. Would you take this one on? What do you want it to look like in 2 to 5 years? What do you want to be different? Taking all of those lessons you've learned from the past, what does it look like in the future?
So, just to clarify, so I don't understand why we are assigning these to people here. We're not all thinking about these terms of.
Well, because it's easier for us to talk about things if we've got a draft to work from, I think, to start with. And I don't see the appetite for us. I think if we try to do this as a group, we're gonna spend at least 1 meeting on each one of these things, and I don't see the appetite for that much longer of this goal setting. So I just want, I'm proposing that you bring some things that are a place for this group to start the conversation. Now, I could be wrong about that. If y'all want to do this jointly, then we come back and we start with one of these next time.
Well, or a modification of that. I mean, I'm trying to be sensitive that this is our 3rd meeting, going into next month would be our 4th meeting. And it's also when we're going to be switching, leadership and new board members coming on. So I think the original hope was that we would have things wrapping up next month.
Yeah.
So what if, I think I know where Joel might be coming from, I would love to see the homework being anybody who's passionate about one of these things writes a goal. If they, and when we meet again next month, that's what everybody's bringing is their goal that they've written. And so there might be 3 or 4 systems plans, but only 2 governance ones, but
Right.
then the group can kind of winnow through and choose
I
the
can
best
totally
language.
look that up, but I need somebody to write on each of them. You need to not come back here and have nobody have worked on
Well,
one.
and I also think it'd be better to have it all due a week before, so it can be sent out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'll do system plan.
Okay, so Ryan plus anybody else is doing systems plan. And yes, I appreciate that, Mike. Everybody, write one, whatever they like, but Ryan is for sure gonna write a systems plan.
I'll also be system plan.
Okay,
I just want to be clear, are we using governance now about the short-term transition, or is it in fact how we're setting up what the long-term governance is going to be in the future? And I got there's restrictions and stuff, but still,
so what I heard from this group before is that short-term transition. That's what I meant by governance, was that short-term transition. What are the
Getting
numbers?
separated, becoming separate, a
Right.
separate 266 district.
266,
governance transition,
governance transition to 266.
yeah, okay, well, that is a short-term thing, and a big deal, but short-term thing. I'm very interested in governance, the bigger sense of governance, and if that's on your relationship, so be it. But how do all the people be included, have the opportunity to be included, so they can go to a meeting and either walk away with it was worth their time or there wasn't, etc. But that relationship, if that includes that kind of governance, that's fine, but it's not being defined that way here.
Okay, so then that's probably me trying to be clear and not being clear. So the governance is gonna be that
But
you're
that's
gonna
it.
do just, just the transition, not to say that the other things are gonna happen after this. This is just for this.
But that's not going to be a conversation that just this body has.
Well, and do any of us have any expertise on what's
Right,
required?
that's where I'm saying, there's a lot of work involved in figuring out. There's a big difference between an advisory committee setup and an elected body
Let me,
setup, a taxing, political entity.
okay, so let me just name what I think is in my head, and I know it's in all your head, but hasn't been said in the half a meeting. My sense is y'all know you're an advisory body, and so you're gonna have goals about what advice you will give. That doesn't mean that it's gonna work. It's gonna happen exactly the way you hope. So I think because your role is an advisory body, you have to have goals about what advice you want to give. And how you want to support that advice based on your history, based on your expertise, based on what your community is telling you, based on all of those things. Does that land okay for everybody? No. Maurice says no.
These are high level goals, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah,
you talk about governors, we're not talking about, well, how you're gonna do this or that, how you're gonna run the meetings. These are what we hope to get out of it, I think. What do we want to get out of this when we change the governance? We want to get more community relations or something.
Well,
hold on. Maureen, will you check in with us?
no, I think we've got off subjects. Everybody's getting personal about their choices of it. And I would just like to go with where your plan is and keep moving along. And I mean, really, this has got a lot of fodder for other discussions, but maybe it's not right here, right now.
Okay. And also, I'm 5 minutes over time, so for lots of reasons, I'm gonna go back here. Trevor, will you write about relationships? Can I ask you to do that? You can write about anything else you want to.
Okay.
Will you outline relationships as you envision it?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I need somebody to take on funding and somebody to take on governance. Sorry,
Either.
either.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, to me, after all this discussion about governance says to me, it's easy to write, it's one sentence, because it's advocate, that's the goal. What county commission that they set up a
Actually,
separate
I
governance.
forgot that.
Power given directly to the people, yeah.
Okay.
And where are they?
And I am you. Okay. Jessica needs everything by 1 week before, Jessica needs everything by the Tuesday before the meeting. Drafts are due to Jessica by the Tuesday, the week before the meeting.
We have a date.
That's easy.
What date is that, Jessica?
Jessica will send out a reminder to everybody with all the dates.
Okay. Do this. Tuesday.
And what we may do is try and get it, ask you to bring it a little earlier, because we want to try and put it all into one thing. So that we're not hitting our noon deadline to submit the packet, so.
And I'll say, send it to Jessica and me, and I'll help you if you want me. If you
Sure.
want me to, I'll help you with that,
I'm really imagining it's just cutting and pasting.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to change anybody's, whatever they've written, so.
Okay,
2 to 5 years, what do you want it to look like?
yep,
That's it.
that's it. All right.
Thanks, Aaron.
I will be back next month.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Next item, changes of status updates, Milwaukee Bay Park, Concord, SDC, methodology, etc.
Okay, I don't really have anything to report on Milwaukee Bay Park. It's still on hiatus while the things are being figured out. With Concord, we included in the packet, we didn't put time aside to talk about it specifically, but we included in the packet the after action report from our Concord playground engagement process, and between in-person participants, which were over 100, and online, I think we were close to 150 total participants. Really good comments. You can see some of the direct quotes from the participants in the packet. SDC methodology, I guess the only thing really to note on that is the board has authorized us to do the ordinance change. It's going to be, first reading is next Thursday for those 3 projects to be added onto the CIP list, which will allow us, but the methodology part itself is still on hold. As far as NCPRD funding, we are coming to Monday, May 22nd is our budget hearing with the budget committee. So that's the Board of County Commissioners and 5 other citizen members. So that'll be happening on the 22nd. Those are the special district hearings. The rest of the budget, I believe, is the next day. We've talked the system plan stuff quite a bit, but one of the big deadlines is tomorrow is our deadline for the RFP. So all of the bids are due in tomorrow. And then Ryan and myself and the rest of the evaluation team, I believe, have our first meeting next week to start talking about that. And CIP plan timeline, it's system plan and CIP. Quite honestly, I'm going to take that CIP part off because it's part of the system plan that's going to be developed as the system plan develops. So I've got a couple of other things if you want me to cover them now. Otherwise, I can wait until district monthly reports, just a couple of other dates.
One quick question, because in talking about the system methodology in the Milwaukee Bay Park, according to the report, it says checkpoint May of 23 for both of them. And so where is it being moved to? Because this is the checkpoint, and I know we don't know, but
yeah, we haven't had a specific, are we going to extend it X a number of days or anything? It's really just in layman's terms, consider it kind of a month-to-month extension at this point until we get things figured out.
Okay.
But it is, effectively still on hold until we can get resolution overall.
okay, thanks.
The only, just since I have it and then I won't have anything for the division reports. The only other one that I wanted to make sure I mentioned is we've got May 17th. So just next Wednesday is a policy session with the NCPRD Board of Directors on the polling process results. So as you remember, we went out and did some community-wide polling. Some of you may have even had a chance to take part in it. I don't know. We've gotten the report from our consultants, and so we'll be presenting that to the Board of Directors next Wednesday in policy session. That's at 1:30.
And so will that be That report be in their packet?
Yes, so the packet will be out, I believe, tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah,
Okay. Great, thank you.
I just can't get ahead of that, so I can't really give you more than that.
No sneak peek.
Yeah, timing just worked out. Our meetings today and a lot of that stuff is tomorrow and happening beyond. So, but that is 1:30 next Wednesday. And if you're interested in attending the budget hearing on May 22nd, that's at 11:30. And that's all I had, Chair.
Thank you. Next item, public comment. So first of all, can we find out if we had any of the DAC members in the?
Yeah, on it.
Yeah, I have no clue. So who is?
On it.
On it, good. Thank you. So public comment. Yes, Valerie, please.
Hi, my name is
Oh,
Valerie.
yeah, come up.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
here,
you.
let me get you.
There's a thing with a mic.
There we go.
My name is Valerie Chapman. I'm been on the board of Oak Grove Community Council for the last 4 years, and I'm the current chair. And I wanted to make a comment regarding public engagement and how things work well for two-way communication. I was really pleased to hear that as part of your discussion. I've always been confused why we created sub-districts when there are also already county planning organizations, areas that are already set up. The OGCC, the Oak Grove Community Council, is the CPO for the Oak Grove area. You're sitting in the Oak Grove area. And this building is in Oak Grove. And we have never missed, throughout the pandemic, we met monthly, except for the very first meeting when everything shut down. We missed 1 month. So we're very well organized. We have heard from the sub-district 2 people. I believe that's 2, Ryan and Anita. Okay, they have come. But our Oak Grove community is divided into 2 sub-districts, which makes no sense to us. A slice of us is in sub-district 1. We have never heard from the sub-district 1 people. They've never come to our meeting. But our community is a whole community. And a part of our board's desire, as we're going forward in the next few years, is to create a parks committee in the Oak Grove community, which is a very dense urban CPO. And I think if you want two-way communication, there has to be a date and time that's very consistent for the community to be involved. And we have that. We have an Oak Grove Community Council meeting once a month, every month, and we've had that for years. And I don't understand why we're divided, because it would seem to me that two-way street would work so much better if you use the communities that already exist, and then we can be working together. I heard it when I came in, and Grover mentioned on the minutes, I believe, that somebody said they were from Oak Grove, and it should be sub-district 1. Sub-area 1, sub-area 1. And I'm like, no, actually, they're from Oak Grove. And why not celebrate that? And why not use, I don't understand why we didn't use the county planning organizations that already exist for the areas, so that our CPO would vote for representatives as a whole CPO, rather than dividing us up. Divide and conquer? I mean, I don't understand. So I just wanted to say that I think good communication works well if you use the systems that are already there, the relationships that are already working. Tap into it, and then we can be supportive of each other rather than dividing us up, which to me doesn't make sense. So that's what I wanted to come and say, and I was really pleased to hear about the two-way communication as part of your conversation. So thank you for letting me talk.
Please.
Please.
I was just gonna say, I think I'm the only one here that actually predates Grover on what was the DAB. And I know going through these discussions on the sub-area creation and possibly adopting the CPOs as the models for those areas was that proportional representation by population, somewhat geography, and then the fact that some of these CPOs just weren't functioning throughout the district. So it's terrific that your CPO is active. Fortunately, other areas in the district didn't have active CPOs, and I think that even our group sometimes loses focus on the fact that while I agree, I don't think you lose your identity as someone that lives in Oak Grove, but we're all also members of the district. So regardless of who's sitting here as a Milwaukee or sub 2 or whoever else or community center, we're representing everyone. And I think that should be our focus as well. But I think to go back to the actual practicality of using the organization you have as a tool, as a valuable tool, which goes back to our earlier discussions, is maybe it does require sub area 1 representatives to reach out to you and find out when your meetings are, and sub area 2 representatives to do the same and take advantage. Those are the opportunities I think we do need to all be looking to. And maybe they aren't aware of them. I mean, even as a community center, representative, I'd love to get that information too. So I don't know if that's something even staff can provide, as far as I'm not familiar which CPOs are active and meeting routinely myself. But having that information available to us as DAC members may be valuable as well.
I hear you.
That's an excellent point. And another thing that goes along with that is, it's, first of all, it's not county planning organizations, they're community planning organizations. I appreciate it. But see, you don't live in the same library district. Not everyone lives in Oak Grove, do not live all in the same library district, nor same legislative district, nor the same voting precinct district. So I want you to know it happens, or school districts, by the way. I'm in the Oregon City School District and I live in Jennings Place. So the point is proportional, needed to have, so voices could be heard, because unfortunately, the distribution of resources is not proportional throughout the entire district. So the idea of having eyes and people who have opinions about what's near to them was why it was done that way. And the Oak Grove Community Council is about Oak Grove. And I used to attend those meetings all the time. But it's about Oak Grove. And now it's the Oak Grove is Fest as opposed to Trolley Trail Fest, which was more inclusive. Now it's Oak Grove. So there's lots of different ways to slice it. Thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Valerie.
Who's next? Is there anyone else online? Jessica, that is a guest.
We have one guest.
Do they wish to speak?
Who do not have their hand raised.
They do not. Do they know they can do that?
It's Jamie Brothers, so I believe so.
I know. Okay, if there's no hands raised, that ends our point of public comment. And thank you, Valerie, for coming in and giving us your perspective. Next is the DAC member reports. Yes, ma'am.
I know Joel has probably many, but I'll just say that, May is Wetlands Month. For those who didn't know it, May is American Wetlands Month, and this Saturday, there's an event from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Menthorn Springs Wetlands on 37th Avenue in Milwaukee, where there'll be, a chance to have a little tour. There'll be somebody to advise people on the birds that are there and birding. Some of us will probably be pulling weeds. There'll be a variety. Oh, and there's a painter. There's a painter who lives near there who's gonna paint. There's a couple painters, I think, who are gonna be set up to paint. Come by and see this wetland. If you've never been there, it's really a cool place. You park where the new Planet Fitness is, and you walk across 37th Avenue to the trailhead. And there should be some signs and stuff up for that.
Thank you.
I will try to actually be brief. The things I wanted to touch on was coming up on June 3rd. Oregon Ballet Theater will be doing a performance at the Milwaukee Community Center. I think these are all in the reports.
Yes, I think so.
Regardless, I wanted to bring it up again. And also, I know some of you even here have already registered for the drag bingo event happening on June 11th. That's a Sunday. And that requires pre-registration, and that should be a pretty popular event. It's the first time that
Find the link for that.
it is, and I would, we've got a our Clackamas County Advisory Board meeting, so we're gonna be meeting Junia with the foundation. Will be there. I struggled to find it myself, try to get some links directly to it on the Milwaukee Community Center website. I know Googling Milwaukee Community Center drag bingo, it pops up.
That's the only way I was able to.
But there should be a clearer way to do it. So I'm gonna try to work on that myself, or at least bring it up this Friday. But That does require pre-registration, and that should be a really fun event. This is also kind of in line with, it's following under the umbrella of the Portland Rose Festival, so hopefully it's going to generate a little more interest that way. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up to just let everyone know that we're kind of excited about at the Milwaukee Community Centers, where we've been working on putting together a plan to put a mural up on the exterior of the Milwaukee Community Center. We're working with the city of Milwaukee. It's their building, and they've got a terrific arts mob organization that's helping us do some of the planning, and city staff as well. So we're excited about that. And that is pretty much it, I think. And then I was actually curious, but I could talk out loud. I was curious how World Laughter Day went also, because I missed that. That was on the 7th, correct?
Yeah, the World Laughter Day, as some of you know, I'm a certified laughter yoga teacher. World Laughter Day was celebrated all around the world this past Sunday. We had 22 participants signed up. Unfortunately, the blue sky came out and it was about 70 degrees right at the start. So we had, I think we had 8 there. And everybody that was there, I mean, we had a great time laughing. But I think that happens anytime you've got, events planned that people are making alternate choices. But we had a great celebration. We're hoping to work out at some point in the near future, starting a weekly laughter club at the community center.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have something else?
Well, I do. It's
I'll
not,
go after you.
okay, it's not exactly a report though, it's more like a public comment, kind of a comment. You want me to wait to the end or you want me to?
Well, I have no idea what it is, but I'm gonna make a DAC member report, so. I'm a
Okay,
DAC member from sub area 1, and the other sub areas have been working together to do our annual process that includes inviting the community to be more engaged. And so our first session is on May 17th at 7 p.m. It'll be this very room. And then the following session will be on June 6th, also in this very room. And the idea is that we will meet as a large group for all 4 unincorporated sub areas. And then from there, we'll update on things that are in the works and then break into the sub areas to have the local community focus on what do they love about what's currently going on in their NCPRD world locally and then in the broader district. Because that way they get you get to hear both points of view, and then similarly, what would you like more of? And we're going to do both that kind of process, plus look at ways, who else do you know that cares about parks? I mean, I live right next to the trolley trail. I meet so many people who use the trolley trail on a regular basis, and I get to talk to them all the time. So it is, how do you keep people informed? So that's part of what we're doing. And then in that same vein, following that on June 21st in this very room will be the board of directors having their quarterly meeting. So those are the things I wanted to let people know about.
Grover, can I just follow up on that?
Sure.
I presume you're talking about the elections for sub-area representatives.
Well, it's actually the selection, because you get to nominate and then they will be
Nomination.
correct. And the assembly of folks will be a nominating committee for the purpose of making nomination, and they will be appointed by the board of directors.
So you mentioned for all the sub-areas, even the ones who don't have to select anybody.
Correct. It's a 2-part process. And you were there when we wrote all the policy on it. It is one to do that part, but it's also to keep focusing on and broadening the 2-way communication. Because when we started that, there was no two-way communications. Members on this, representatives here, had no tie to the local community whatsoever. Our representative who lived up the street, not one time, invited repeatedly, would come to the Jennings Lodge CPO meeting and share any information. So there was no 2-way communication. So that's one of the things we said about trying to change. So the directive from the board of directors was to continue to grow that. So thanks for raising that question. 2 parts.
Okay, yeah, I was planning on coming, but wasn't sure whether I was gonna have anything to do or not.
it will be a matter of meeting with other people from your sub area and talking about how's things going for them? What are things they love, things they'd like to have more of, et cetera, so y'all be more informed to be able to do that kind of stuff. That's the intent, and it's a slow growth. When we started, it was hardly anybody, and we get a bit more now. Yes, Katie.
I represent an area of unincorporated Clackamas County, for those who don't know, called Sub Area 3. I just want to give an update. I've heard from some local residents who are wanting to plan a kind of a get together at the Justice property at some point to just kind of hang out in our field and say hi to people and encourage them that it would be a great place for a park someday. So that's been kind of a planning process we've been having, is getting people a little excited about Justice being a future park. I've also had the chance to reach out to a couple local organizations that are really more skate park based, because a lot of those folks go into Portland to have to do their hobby. And I think it would be great to hear some voices from people whose recreation interests could be more present in the places that they live.
We'll be reaching out to that specific group during our systems plan.
That is fabulous. The group that talked were, excited to share that with their members, just so people knew, because I don't know that, those folks always know that they do have a place at this table as well.
Can you keep us in the loop on if the date is set for that Justice Field gathering?
Yeah, we're just kind of talking so far, but yeah, I'll let you
Yeah.
know what we figure out. We'll probably just set out a blanket
Yeah.
and eat sandwiches and kind of hang out and see what happens.
Just be
So,
interested to, that might be interesting to attend, so
yeah, definitely. I'll let you
maybe get the rec mobile up.
Maybe, yes.
know. That sounds much cooler than we were thinking.
Oh, blanket's cool too.
Yeah.
Any more DAC member reports?
This one's small. I was walking the trolley trail and I was waiting at Jennings and 99E. Several cyclists who cycle that trail often said the annoyance of having to go through 2 crosswalks to cross over 99E for the remainder of the trolley trail was annoying. Interested in a diagonal type crosswalk is what they were, because they said it's dangerous for them. They're on a 2-wheeler. They have to go over one and another crosswalk. You get the multiple right hand turns. They're like, if I had a diagonal, I could just walk across. It would save me the potential risk of being T-boned twice in a right angle or via a right hand turn. So something to consider. They told this to me. They didn't know I was a DAC representative. I was just chatting about 2-wheelers and them being dangerous, and then we got on the conversation.
There is a diagonal on Johnson Creek on
Mhm.
Redwater. Yeah,
Bill.
that battle.
Is that an ODOT issue though?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's probably beyond.
Oh, 99E
yeah,
is
they
technically
control
the
how
state
it
patrol,
goes
yeah.
across, yeah.
That's a lot.
However, the Hall Avenue and Boardman crosswalk works remarkably well, and it's only one crossing. It doesn't help that particular issue,
Yeah.
because there are so many bicyclists who do River Road down Boardman and then continue on
Yep.
on the trolley trail. So I know.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I'm sorry. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
So this is, I spent some time looking at the map, the district's map. And, because we hear so much here about Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge, I guess I thought that was the most underparked area, but actually, sub area 4 is the most underparked area. Sub area 4 is definitely the most underparked area. I'm really, I just want to put this out there, especially as we're launching into a systems planning effort. Especially I'm concerned about the area between 82nd and 205. That is a high density. If you mapped our district for population density, that's by far like the dense and underserved area. So I want us to keep that all on our radar screen. Even if they're not the squeaky wheel, good governance is looking at things equitably, looking at where the needs are. And that is a really underserved area, and no one from sub area 4 paid me to say this.
I'm sitting on both sides.
Oh, yeah, there's not a piece from sub area 4, I'm sorry.
And Grover, if I may, as part of the system plan process, again, we keep going back to, it's almost gonna, in the system plan process, we need T-shirts. But part of that is gonna be some spatial analysis that's really gonna try and vet out, because when we talk about underserved, Are we talking about a number of parks per population, number of, amenities per park? So trying to put a value on what we have and then be able to spatially, show that on maps and overviews is hopefully going to show that. And we're going to try and show it in several different levels of service. Not just, one filter, and be able to show it based on income, based on, ages, based on population density, based on income, all of those things. And be able to really show, because we're going to see, I'm guessing, several different underserved areas in different ways throughout the district, and they'll show up as hotspots in these graphical representations. So I'm very excited to get that part of it, because again, I hear the same thing, but I want to really have that data that validates and it gives us that ability to focus. Because remember, it's not the squeaky wheels that are going to be getting into the data-driven results of the system plan. It's going to be the statistically validated process and all of that community engagement. So it's not, we hope that and part of what we're asking the DAC to do is to help reach out to those underserved populations, whatever they are. However you define underserved or underrepresented, I should say, to get the word out, so that when we are doing these engagements, whether it's community surveys or focus groups or town hall meetings or comment periods, we want to make sure that we're trying to get as much of that as possible, so that way it gives us that comprehensive look.
Thank you. And actually, I'm glad you ended on the word comprehensive, because I want to point out that more than 80% of NCPRD is in unincorporated, and that unincorporated is driven by a state mandated process called the community planning. And there is a community plan, and Milwaukee has its own community plan, but so does the other. And it even outlines from 50 years ago how NCPRD could be formed. They laid it out as a choice. And they named two neighborhoods, the Overlook neighborhood, which is the one you're referring to up there, and Oak Lodge as being the most underserved parts of. But it also has a chart that talks about being able to walk less than a mile to a park. And we're talking about neighborhood parks, neighborhood parks, neighborhood parks. And that is the significant lack through all over. And that, so I appreciate what you said. And so yes, and I really do hope we get hard data to talk about what part of the park, draw circles around every park and then see all the people who have more than a mile, more than 2 miles to get to a park. And
But that may or may not be one. I mean, again, we're going to be looking at the levels of service and how we define them. The number of parks per thousand, per thousand population, or number of things, acres per, these are old models of level of service. And what we're anticipating, at least, is whoever our consultant is going to be coming in and making recommendations. We've already talked about the comprehensive plan. Part of what this process is going to do is going to be updating that, because again, we don't want to be looking at data from 50 years ago, or whenever it was last
but it's not
updated.
data, it pointed out to where the lack is.
But that's data. I mean, we may find that there's data points that none of us agree with, but you know what? They're going to be data points. We may not agree with them, but that's how the data pulls out, as long as we've done a good comprehensive job of gathering that data. So I just want to make sure we're managing those expectations of, there's going to be stuff that I've already told staff, there's going to be something that comes from way out of left field that we've never even thought about for service. I don't know what it is, but it happens every single process that I go through.
Right.
So I ask everybody to be patient and conscious of that as well.
I just wanted to bring up, since some area forward mentioned that had the 82nd between 205. As you're probably aware, there's been some affordable housing units built in, like 350 units built in the last year. So you got to make sure you don't go back to the 1910 census or 1920.
Right.
Or 2020
I'll try not to use 1910 census.
And I think Norma mentioned a community plan. How could there have been a plan when they built these places? There were no parks in the area.
Right. Yeah,
So-
and that's why some of those density things are being challenged now as far as levels of service. So
Yeah.
we'll get into a lot more of that as the consultancy kicks off. Which is not that long away. Kickoff in June is our hope, so.
Terrific.
Super.
But at the same time, as you mentioned, a lot of people live in those
Yeah.
places. aren't gonna be participating because they have other things they're
Yep,
doing.
and as a sub-area 4 resident myself, I am also interested in that. I know that as well, so. Yeah, it's gonna be a great process. I'm very excited and I'm glad that all of you are along for the journey.
Yeah,
And to be clear, so what we're gonna hear on Wednesday midday is the report about the system plan. That was,
No, you're getting, the governance change is next Wednesday.
okay, good,
That's the governance change report.
okay. Look forward to hearing.
Yeah, system plan, tomorrow is the deadline for bids.
Okay, good. Super,
So much going.
yeah. Good thing you have more people to help
Exactly.
spread it out. Any last comments?
Oh, just raised her hand.
What's that?
Anita
Anita
raised
just
her
raised her
hand.
hand.
Okay, let's all hear from Monica.
Well, I was just thinking about how, there's this nice enthusiasm about the two-way communication and how essential that is if you want to change the governance and change the tax rate, you need to, the community members who are going to vote for that need to feel that they really are being heard and that the two-way communication is robust and happening well.
Here. Is that it? I think she's done. You done? Okay, good, thanks. Any last comments? You're adjourned, thank you all.